Am I on up the aisle? I think so. Good morning. It's good to see everyone here this morning. I was back there talking. I know that's hard for y'all to believe. But it is good to see everyone here this morning. And I know that Jim and Patty Smith are still having some issues, struggling a little bit. Patty had a doctor's appointment it was kind of a long week for her, I guess, because that's only been a week ago. A week ago, she was in the hospital. On Monday, bless her heart, they were going to run another test, and she didn't understand or correspond to, and so she checked herself out and walked out. Jim happened to be there with Ron McCon across the street for a doctor's appointment. She told them to pick her up, and she was waiting at the curb for them. And so then on Thursday, I took her back to the doctor here at Ascension over here, and so there was a prescription. So they're kind of struggling. Jim's, had issues a little bit too. So anyway, keep them in your prayers. I know that Richard and Gail Willis continue to need our prayers. I didn't get to go this week. Martin, how is Gail doing in her rehab? It's a slow process. I understand. Very slow process in that rehabilitation. So we want to definitely remember them in our prayers. Huh? I understand. So we want to continue to remember them in our prayers. And also I know that Mary Ann Linton, who is there as well, member here, and her with dementia and so on, is very difficult at this time as well. So we want to keep these all in our prayers. Are there others that we need to mention right now? Yes. Sue. Yeah, Sue Coon, please remember her. I'm sorry, I should have remembered that. Yeah, because once again, those situations are just difficult, and we don't know how to. I don't know what you do. Just love on them as best you can when you're there, and pray. And that's what we're going to do now. So that's exactly right. So let's go to our Father in prayer. Lord God, as we come before you, we're just so thankful for this avenue of prayer. And dear God, we come to you this morning as your children and asking. And Lord, there's some things that we don't understand. And we don't understand some of the illnesses and the things that we see, and why that our brothers and sisters have to suffer with some of these things. And Lord, yet we know that you're in control. And so it's because of that knowledge that we come to you, dear God, and asking you with all belief and with all confidence that you comfort them through this. And that you give us strength that we also, dear God, will reach out and to minister to them in what we can, and dear God, to pray daily, because we know that you hear our prayers, and you want to hear our prayers. You want us to talk to you, and dear God, help us to understand that. Help us in our unbelief, Lord, that where we think that maybe there's something that you can't forgive. And Lord, it's so wrong for us to be that way. But rather, dear God, build our faith so that with all confidence, when we come before you, dear God, and we ask these things, we know that you will answer our prayers. And dear God, this morning we come to you with that confidence, knowing that you hear and that you will answer, because we see what you have done through Jesus Christ, your Son, and the salvation that we have through him, dear God. And it's in his name that we ask these things. Amen. All right, this morning, does anybody here understand? Maybe I should say it this way. Is there anybody here that doesn't understand that there's a difference between men and women? I didn't know if somebody had maybe jumped on or gotten run over by that trans wagon that run through, here. And you do understand that basically is gone. It didn't last long, but it's gone. There's still some people trying to hang on that. But I want us to think about this. Now, ladies, please understand something. Because Christian women are different. All right? I want to spend, though, just a few minutes and let us look at the worldliness. And this is the reason why, when we come to Christianity, that we talk about the idea of that our sons and our daughters marry other Christians that are sons and daughters of Christians. Because I want to look at Potiphar's wife for just a moment. All right? And this is not easy because of the reference that it makes toward women in some regards. There might be somebody that would be offended by this, and that is not the intent of this. But it is just the fact that women and men do think differently in this regard. Let's take a look at the very end of chapter 39 of Genesis for just a moment. All right? Now we know that, and I want to make mention of this real quick at the very beginning of this. Joseph was taken, we know, into Egypt. He was sold to an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, captain of the bodyguard. Please remember that. He's captain of the bodyguard. All right? So now then, we come down here, and in chapter 39, verses 10 through 12, as we look at this, in verses 10 through 12, what does it give you about this lady? What do you get from this idea? Huh? She was a seductor, exactly. But what more than every day it continued, persistent in that behavior. You understand? Are ladies more apt, if I were to ask the guys in here and just say, guys, are women more apt to continue to ask you about things at your house? I mean, every 6 months my wife will ask me about something. It's like, yeah, didn't I tell you I'd do it? Exactly. But a woman sometimes will be more persistent in those things. A guy will, in that time. And you know what? Then there's that one time when it's like, oh, something happens, and a guy will just do it. Never say anything about it. Never go tell your wife that you did it, and just go on. And she's like, well, when did you do that? It just fell into place one day, and I did it. But in this regard, this lady, now I want you to think about something. What kind of behavior do we call this? Is this lust? Would this be considered as lust? Would this be persistent in that? Because it says daily. Even when, now, we know that in the story of what eventually happened, that Joseph is in there by himself, but were the other servants there when she was also making these advances and so on in that regard? And the answer is, well, yeah. All right? So now then, and I've always, as a kid, of course I can understand that as a kid, you see the pictures that they have in your little Bible books or whatever it is, and it's like she's got hold of the sleeve of his garment or something. I got news for you. She didn't just have hold of the sleeve of his garment and happen to pull it off of him because he would have jerked. I mean, reality. If she just grabbed the sleeve of that garment, what's he going to do? He's going to jerk that away from her, and he's going to get out of there and go on. She took his whole robe. Now, how did she have hold of him? Difference in the story when you start putting that together. She made this advance on him, and he somehow got out of that robe, and he left. Two things about this. Once again, going back to the guy versus the woman kind of thing. If something like that happens in a deal like that, is the guy going to go out and start talking about it to everybody else? You know what she just did to me? No. He's going to be what? One, he's kind of embarrassed. Two, it's like, my goodness, that's my master's wife that just, made that advance on me. And I mean, he's going to be fearful, but in her regard, what does she do? Now, and this is where men think differently than ladies. So in the ladies' aspect, what is this lady thinking when he runs out? Redemption or vengeance? Lust goes to... Now, remember, this is vengeance, not revenge. Revenge is when something has occurred and I take action against what that action was, right? What did Joseph do to this lady? Nothing. This is lust to vengeance. Now then, what I want to ask you, though, because this thought came to me this morning reading back through this, first time I had thought of this. Before Potiphar came back home, if Joseph had walked back in there and said, maybe I was too hasty, what do you think Mrs. Potiphar's response would have been then? Lust and vengeance. Very strange combination in some regards, right? So think about that. Did Joseph understand that he was in trouble? I think when he got away from there and he began to put this together, and it's like, what am I going to do? One, I can't lie, right? Can't lie because that's against what God would tell me to do. Will my master believe me if I tell the truth? Whose word is Potiphar going to take? Is he going to take Joseph's word, or is he going to take his wife's? Joseph is in a no-win situation. I don't care how you cut it. He ain't coming out of this clean. So what does he do? You take the high road. Did he say anything to anybody else according to what nothing was ever said? Did he argue with Potiphar in this regard? No. So Joseph just understands and he goes. Now then, I want you to think now we're going to flip-flop this and we're going to go to Potiphar's side. We're going to think like a guy for just a little bit. Can you handle that? Okay, so let's think like a guy. Potiphar comes in. Oh, look, and here's his garment left laying here. And I screamed, and he just, what's Potiphar thinking? No guy would run off and leave your clothes there. Right? I mean, if you were going to do that, you'd make sure you took your clothes duds with you. You wouldn't leave the evidence behind in that regard. So, and Potiphar's listening to this story, and he's like, and then as Potiphar goes, he's like, wait a minute, why would he leave that there? Then he goes back and he looks at, wait a minute, everything that I have given this slave to do has prospered. Look at what I've gained from this. God has blessed him, and I understand that his God has blessed him because everything that I've given him to do, it's just flourished. I mean, everything has gotten better. And Potiphar's thinking like a guy. He's saying, could Potiphar have had Joseph killed because of what his wife accused him of? I'm thinking, yeah, because who is Potiphar? Head of the Secret Service. They could have buried him in the desert and we'd still be looking for his bones, Right? But he didn't do that. What did Potiphar do? It's like, something not adding up. I'm going to give the guy benefit of the doubt. He's done so many good things to me. I mean, and all of a sudden he does this. Something not adding up. So where did he put him? Now this is the interesting part, and you got to get over into chapter 40 before you truly understand all of this, because it all goes together. So where did Potiphar put Joseph? Huh? He put him in the jail that who was in charge of? Potiphar, the captain of the bodyguard. And it tells us then in chapter 40, as we begin to look at it, that it's in the house of Potiphar, the jail that was in the house of Potiphar. Did Potiphar get rid of Joseph? No. He kept him close. He put him in charge. The guy that was in charge of the jail that Potiphar had there why did he turn Joseph loose into prison to take care of everything? He come up with that on his own? No, because if that was as guilty as that guy said he was, Potiphar wouldn't have allowed that to happen. Chain of command. I'm not dumb, but I got that part figured out. I mean, I am dumb, but I got that part figured out. So the chain of command comes down. So what had Potiphar told this jailer? Listen, this guy has been outstanding. Everything that he has touched has turned into, you can trust him. Potiphar would say, I trust him. Let me go back now and we'll flip-flop. Why would Potiphar trust Joseph? Maybe because had his wife done something like this before? Well, we don't know. We don't know the rest of that story. But odds are, yeah. So Potiphar, in this regard, shows, we could say, now is the word grace or mercy right here? What would we put together with this? And so when we look at this story, but the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him. How in the world can you extend kindness to someone who is in prison? Think about where Joseph is in this thing. I leave the house, I'm in the jail, but the jail is part of my master's house, and the master has told the man in charge of me, give him, you can trust him, give him whatever to do in the prison, and he'll take care of it. Was that a blessing from God as well? And the answer is, well, yes. And so did Joseph have freedom within the jail? And the answer is yes. I always wonder about this a little bit because it makes me think of years ago, there were two that they used to talk about, Tucker and Cummins prison farms, and that's the way they were referred to, prison farms over in Arkansas, where all of the inmates were given jobs. They were in the fields, they were working, they were doing all these different things. They were canning, they were doing all those things. They were farms, they were working farms, and all the inmates were involved in that and so on. I kind of look at this prison, it's kind of the same thing. And now then, here's where we can get into politics. Who's benefiting from the use of these prisoners? Who? Is Potiphar, aren't they in his house? So would Potiphar be benefiting from things that they might do and so on because they've been sent there to get away from, as we'll find out from here and so on. So, but Potiphar's using them. So who's benefiting by the work that they're being? Do we understand that? That doesn't happen today though, right, in government? Yeah, all right. Y'all laugh. It was understandable. Yeah. So Potiphar's benefiting from this. Why did he put Joseph in place then in the jail? Because he saw how he had benefited because of Joseph's God. He puts him in the jail and he says, hey, turn him loose because whatever he... So now then is this, and it seems to be working this way. So the chief jailer committed to Joseph's charge all the prisoners. New guy coming in, you just going to turn him loose with everything? No. Potiphar talked to him. Everybody who was there, and whatsoever was done there, he was responsible for. But it says that God was with Joseph. The jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because, why? The Lord was with him. Do these Egyptians understand who God is? They don't know this God. The only thing that they're looking at is the actions through Joseph. This God, whoever this God is that is with Joseph, man, he's doing things that we just wish our gods could do because we're not seeing it. It's not the same in this regard. But it's evident to everybody who is in contact with Joseph. God is working. How? We don't understand how, all of it, but we know that he's working. Chief jailer committed all the prisoners. That's the other thing. Everybody, all who were there, because the Lord was with him. Joseph prospered because he did good. Going right back to the story with Potiphar's wife, did Joseph lie about anything? No. What did he do? And in this case, I don't know that he even tried to tell his story to Potiphar. Because why? Would Potiphar have listened? So does Joseph understand that this is a moot point? I know what's getting ready to happen. There's nothing I can do. And it may not have been till later when he had to confront Potiphar, but I don't think that Joseph ever uttered a word. And then we can think about another verse where it said that as a lamb led dumb to the, and we think about Jesus Christ later on, but here's an example of the same thing. It's like, there's no need in saying anything. I'll just accept the punishment. How many employers, I put a note down here to myself, how many employers would love to have a man like Joseph, an employee like Joseph, because he did what was right? The Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made good, because Joseph was doing good and not evil. Everything that Joseph did was beneficial. It was positive. It was encouragement. It was to the benefit of anybody and those around him, even in this case, his master. Not for his own personal gain, but everything he did for his master. He did it so that his master benefited. His master grew in whatever way, and he continued. How many people today would love to have an employee like that? That you didn't have to supervise? That you could just tell them what you want, and that guy is going to go get it done, and you know that it's going to be, and you're going to benefit from whatever this guy does? How many employers would love to have an employee like that? And as Christians, is that for us to continue to follow in that regard? If we are following and doing what God's will is, and the answer is, well, yes. By doing it that way, will God bless us in our works? Does that mean that I'm going to benefit myself? How much did Joseph benefit in worldly goods and possessions? Right here, nothing. But he was not working for himself. He was working for his master. And in that, Joseph was well pleased and well pleasing to God because he continued to do what was right. So there is a little bit of difference that we can look at between men and women. I say just a little bit, not a whole lot, but definitely in the way that sometimes we think. And that's good. I don't want everybody to think like me. The world would be a dull, boring, well, no, it wouldn't, because there'd be a whole lot of stuff going on. But it's good to have different thoughts, different ideas, see how people do things differently, to see what happens. And so then we get into chapter 40. And as we look at this, we find out that, and it's a considerable time. How long has Joseph been in prison now? We really don't know. But we do know then that there is a chance. And when you look at this to some extent, it's almost like There's a different Pharaoh that has taken place. And I can't prove that. I don't know. But just kind of with the way some of the things read and so on in regard to this. And so in this next chapter, we find out that the Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt, he has a cupbearer. This cupbearer, I always think of as like a wine taster. You know, because were people always trying to poison somebody? In fact, if you kind of read through our recent history of our federal government, there have been numerous attempts to poison people within the federal government, and some of them have been successful, but it's kind of under the, and you can find that information, but you got to dig because it's not laying on the surface. They try to bury that. So is that stuff still going on? And the answer to that is yeah. And so this cupbearer, in that same regard, that he brings the cup and so on, he would also, I'm assuming that because of that he was also the taste tester, that he taste tested things so that before he brought it to Pharaoh, he made sure that it wasn't poisoned or whatever in that regard, because he was going to be dead if it was. The baker, he's the baker. I don't know. He bakes breads, cookies, cakes, I don't know. That's just in that regard. But it says that Pharaoh was furious with his two officials. What in the world? He must have burned the biscuits is all I can say. If he was furious with the baker. He had to burn the biscuits, and the wine taster brought him some bitter wine. I don't know, the cupbearer. I don't know. But it says that Pharaoh was furious with them. And he put them in confinement. Now then, here's going back to the start of chapter 39. Here we come over to chapter 40. And he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, which is who? Potiphar. The captain of the bodyguard is Potiphar. So these guys come to the same jail that's in the house of Potiphar where Joseph is. Potiphar didn't unload Joseph. And is Potiphar still watching? Yeah. If it had just been left up to Potiphar, would Joseph have been out of prison by now? I think probably so. But in the same way that she was persistent toward Joseph to commit an act, do you think that she's not been persistent in her effort to get Joseph hammered because of, I'm just drawing speculation, but like we said, when you look at the differences, was she ever content that Joseph was just in prison? And the answer is probably not, because as long as he's still alive, is there a chance that the truth comes out? Been a whole bunch of people disappeared from the face of the earth for that very reason. So he's still in prison, and that's where these two servants of Pharaoh wind up. And so immediately, whose charge are they put under? Joseph. And he takes care of them, and they were in confinement for some time. Now, when we say sometimes, we could be talking about a few years right here. In fact, I think that Joseph probably has already been there for a few years. And then these guys show up. And then we know that they both have dreams. And I want you to take a look at something. In this dream, they both have dreams on the same night. What number do both of these guys have in these dreams? 3. Now, remember, we've talked about 3 before. We said that, in Genesis chapter 1, let us. Well, with us, it has to be 3 or more. So there was 3, God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. We look at, then this number 3 continues to come through here. So, in this regard, we've gone through this, we've told these stories so many times, that the cupbearer had what? Well, there was 3 vines that grew up, and they had grapes and so on. And then the grapes it grew in the cup, and he mashed the grape, and they went, and so he says, and Joseph tells him a positive interpretation. This means that in 3 days, you're going to get called, you'll go back before Pharaoh, and you will be reinstated as his cupbearer. And I think that this is an interesting part. Because what does Joseph also put with this interpretation? What does he put with it? His own plea, right? He puts his own plea bargain deal in it. And when you get there and this happens, please remember me. Get me out of here. Because why? Haven't done anything. And so Joseph is looking that maybe this is where God is going to use somebody to get him out of there. So he puts that out there. And then he goes to the baker. Oh, and I think that it's interesting too, and I wanted to point this out, and I see this word again right here. The word Hebrew. Potiphar's wife used it when she was talking to the other servants, saying this Hebrew that he has brought in, which tells us that most of the other servants probably there were Egyptian, right? What does the word Hebrew mean? It's first used, I had to go back, and I know there's lots of, but it's first used in Genesis chapter 14, verse 13, where it talks about an Abram, a Hebrew. Hebrew means to cross over. I checked 7 different guys, 6 of them had similar ideas, and the one, I think this is very interesting. The one that's always different is the guy that's Jewish. And he'll have a totally different meaning of what everybody else consensus is and so on. The word Hebrew means to cross over. They used it for Abram because he had crossed over the Euphrates when he came into the land of Canaan. All right? So now then, with this idea of Hebrew, were they a people yet? I guess because they were the descendants of Abram who had crossed over, that those people were Hebrew because they were part of his. So that's where the name, I'm assuming, originated in this regard. And she is using this term once again, Hebrew, to talk about this guy from somewhere else because he crossed over into our land and he is a stranger here. And because of that, he's taking advantage. So this word Hebrew comes up. And Joseph uses the fact that, for I was in fact kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, which is where his family is. And even here, I have done nothing that I should have been put into the dungeon. We don't get a response from the cupbearer. So we don't know how he, in this regard. Then the baker comes in and he says, hey, I had this dream too. And I had these baskets on my head, and there was bread, 3 baskets, and that represents the 3 days, and the birds came and ate that. And Joseph said, how do you handle this? Because Joseph has always been positive. Now, even before this, these guys come up. They show up one morning. Joseph's down there taking care of them, and they're dejected. They're like, oh. And Joseph looked at him and said, what's wrong with you guys today? What's happening, man? And they said, well, we both had dreams last night. Well, that's no big deal. The interpretation of dreams belongs to God anyway, so tell me. Oh, here's this God of Joseph's again. We've seen what this God, how he reacts with Joseph, but he can do dreams too. Now then, my question is, do you think that the other prisoners in there are kind of listening in? Everybody's working, doing their jobs and everything. And these 2 guys, and Joseph's like, hey, how you guys? Oh, what's the matter? How come your face is long? Oh, we both had dreams last night. Oh, our interpretations belong to God, so tell me, and God will tell. And so he prays it. Well, then, and I don't care who you are, you got to feel bad for the guy who burnt the biscuits. I'm telling you, because the first guy gets a good report. And then so he's like, well, yeah, and Joseph looks at him and he's like, yeah, you're going back in 3 days, just like the other guy, but they're going to hang you out and the birds are going to eat you, pick the flesh off your body. So not turning out good for you. And Joseph doesn't put anything with him to, hey, remember me when you, no, that's not there. How would you feel if you were Joseph and you interpreted this in this regard? See, Joseph has, now please understand, and this is where Joseph understands that where did this interpretation come from? God. And if it came from God, is there anything against me, or is there anything I can do to change it? And the answer is no. Not happening, because that's the way God said it would be. Does Joseph have to be apologetic for this? No. Just the way it is. That's what God said. If you're telling the truth, you don't have to apologize. My granddad always told me, and for a while, it was like, I'm not sure I really understand. He said, if you tell the truth, you never have to worry about what you said. And I used to wonder about that, like, until I saw people who were liars, and they would tell this person one thing, and you would hear that, and then they would tell you, wait a minute, that's not the same story you told. Oh, that's what he was talking about. If you're going to lie, you got to make sure you tell the same lie all the time in order for it to be, right? But if you tell the truth, you simply tell the truth. You don't have to worry about what you said. And so they go back, and then what happens? Just exactly what Joseph said. The cupbearer was restored. He brought the wine and set the cup in Pharaoh's hand. What happened to the biscuit burner? Birds picked his flesh, just as Joseph had said. The interpretation was true. And like with, and I use this as an example, what did Joseph's God mean to the cupbearer? What did this God of Joseph's mean to that cupbearer? Nothing. How do we know that? Because he didn't remember to put, so it meant nothing. He got what he wanted, which was favorable interpretation back in front of Pharaoh. And what did God mean to? Do we see, we're all guilty. Do we see people who get blessed that, oh yeah, Lord, and they show up once they're right, and then they get blessed over here, and they never give God the credit? And do we see that, and we get frustrated, and do we see that? Yeah, I can speak for everybody in here. Yes. Okay. Because why? Because you're human just like I am. And we all do these kinds of things. So what happens to Joseph? Does Joseph sull up and get mad? God, that was supposed to be my ticket out of here. And did he blame God? No. What did Joseph do? Continued to do things right. Because he did things right, did God continue to bless him, so that in all that he did, he was prospering for his master. Joseph could have really shut things down right here. He could have, but was that what God wanted from him? And the answer is no. We look at this, here is the strength that we see in Joseph, is that in this period of time, and I think really and truly right here, he's worse off mentally right now than he was when Potiphar's wife, because that was all just so emotional, whatever. But in this regard right here, because he's been there, he's thinking that this is, and then it doesn't happen. Is this where Joseph could have quit? How many of us would have quit? But he didn't. He continued, stayed the course, continued to do what was right in the eyes of who? in the eyes of God, and because he continued in the eyes of God to do those things, did everything begin to continue to prosper that was under Joseph's care? And the answer to that is yeah. And so now then, here's Joseph. He's still in prison. And 2 years later, and that's where we'll start in chapter 41. 2 years after this incident, and Joseph's still prospering in all that he does because God's with him. All right. Thank you all. And are there any questions or comments? I know I talked a bunch today. I don't know. Any questions or comments about this? All right. Thank you all. Appreciate you very much.